the AI solutions with a restriction for some AIs which will not respect a certain level of risks to integrate the European market. So that means it's very, very important. It was acted in last December, and the development and the implications of these principles acted in European Union will be developed in each legislation of European countries. And it will be a real perspective and important things to integrate for all developers or startups or entrepreneurs who want one day to use or to develop their AI solution in European market. We have also the personal data protection rules. In India, I think that there is something which is called reasonable security practices and procedures and sensitive personal data or information rules, which was acted in 2011 and which is today completely in change to integrate all the issues, new issues related to AI. We have also issues related to intellectual property, which is a big question with generative AI today. Who is the owner of all these creations of AI, which is a big debate today, and law it's not really answered this question today. We will see in the future how this question of intellectual property will be addressed. We have also, for example, the facial recognition. I don't know if you know that in France, for example, it's forbidden to have the facial recognition, which is not the case in some other countries. We know that in China, for example, it's a big practice when it is questioned to AI. It is also, I think, more than a legal issue. It's also a cultural issue, I think, here. And we don't have the same consideration of this aspect related to facial recognition. So these rights are in principle protected by laws and regulation in force, or the rights related to human impact. And if not, we could have a limitation to access to the market, to a market of some countries. However, more needs to be done. We know that technology is advancing faster than law, and the nature of today's AI system, especially those using deep learning technologies, and their strong impact on our lives, because we have them everywhere in our smartphone, in our laptops, etc., lead to a high concentration of ethical risks. So legislation does not always keep pace with technological development, and sometimes does not correspond to ethical standard, or may simply be inadequate to address certain issues. And that's why we need to develop and to integrate all of this ethical principle of AI in creation and also in education related to AI, machine learning, and big data. So we will try to understand these 6 principles of AI. I will give you some examples for each one, just to have an idea about how some very well-known model of AI does not respect these ethical principles, and then we'll try to give a definition for each one. So we will talk about fairness, equity, explicability, privacy, robustness, and security. Let's begin by fairness. The problem here is the risk of confusion between AI and human being. This is the main risk that we have. The risk of abuse of weakness, of deception, of the attack of the dignity of humanity, but also the lack of public knowledge of the functioning capacities and limits of AIs likely to generate mistrust. Let's take an example to understand that, and we'll come back to the principles and to the definition. The first example is the example of duplex from Google. A few months ago, Google made a lot of noise by presenting duplex. I don't know if you know it. It's AI, which is an assistant able to make calls in your place, to book, for example, a table at a restaurant or an appointment at the hairdresser. Although admired at first, because the assistant uses human codes such as waiting, etc., and other small signs that are unique to us, duplex quickly became controversial because the assistant did not specify to his interlocutor that he was talking to an AI. Since Google reassured by explaining that a real announcement will be made, and while Duplex has recently been launched on some Pixel smartphones, the controversies continue because it was not very clear when you use Duplex that you are talking with an AI. And this has an impact on dignity, on this fairness that we are looking for, that means that the user must understand without ambiguity that he or she is interacting with a machine. This is one of the main important principles that we have in AI, this fairness, the fact that I understand clearly that it is that I'm talking with a machine. Let's take another example, the example of recommendation systems. We know that AI can be used today as part of strategies that lead through increasingly finely targeted recommendations to a limitation of customers' freedom of choice. Because we have this, what we call the filter bubble, on which we try to put you, consumers can see their range of choices reduced according to their past consumption or according to the customer segment to which the algorithm attaches them. And this also real ethical issue when it is question of AI, because the user must know how the system uses his personal data and give these recommendations. And the idea is not to put people in some segments and filter bubble, because it restrains their capability to openness and to understand all the evolution of their world. The third example that we could take is the example of virtual court in Ontario. I don't know if you already know that. In Ontario, in Canada, we have already virtual court, which is responsible for settling disputes between neighbors or between an employee and employers. So we have a software program, which is an AI system, which is used to settle small commercial disputes. We have also that in Estonia, where a robot should soon establish the guilt of a person for minor disputes less than 7,000 euros. So already we have that, the use of AI in very important questions for humanity, which is question of justice. And here, one of the principles is that the user must know if an AI is involved in the result of calculation that is decisive for him, or that could give a decision that concerns him, or that he must take. So very, very important principle, that we understand that the results that we have, that the decision that we have, the creation and was done by an AI. So what is fairness? If we try to resume that, fairness means that AI communicates its purpose, its functioning, its limits to the user, and does not try to deceive him. And we need to integrate all these issues when we create an AI system. Second one is equity. The problems here are, first, that machine learning train from designer-provided datasets that may prove biased. The risk is to lead to a false or discriminatory results. Let's take the example of Amazon Recruitment AI. If you know this example, it's an artificial intelligence developed by the company, which was supposed to help the internal recruitment process. The company, Amazon, had to stop using it in 2017. The program has existed since 2014. It was one of the first in the world AI solutions to create automatization of recruitment. It made it possible to sort the resumes of candidates who apply for a job at Amazon. And depending on their estimated quality, AI gave them a rating ranging from 1 to 5 stars, like a product sold on the website. But the problem of this AI solution, that a year after its creation, Amazon realized that it did not really like women. Those who applied for web developer positions or other technical jobs consistently scored lower because they are women. This bias was linked, as is often the case in such solutions, to the way AI was designed. She was trained with the profiles of people employed in the company between 2004 and 2014, who were mostly men. So the AI concluded that the selection male candidates first was preferable. So this is an example of biases that we could introduce because of the data set that we use when we train AI. We have a lot of other examples. We have the example also of speech moderation algorithms and all hate detection system on Twitters. And we, for example, after putting that in place, we found that if we are American people, we have 1.5 times more likely to be censored by this algorithm. And this is another biases which is which is to integrate when we create AI. So the system of AI must operate impartially. It must in particular aim not to reinforce or create discrimination due to biases introducing during training or in the algorithm. So very, very important issue when it is question of ethics in AI. And it is about the data set that we use, but it is also about the algorithm that we will put in place and the capacity to explain how it is created. Another example is of Twitter algorithm at the start of 2020. Twitter was criticized about his unfortunate tendency to highlight photos of white faces rather than black. This caused an improper among users of the famous social network who then argued that this algorithm model were mostly fed with images representing white people. So here enough to generate unintentionally, for sure, an algorithm bias at the origin of discriminations. And however, this discrimination could be avoided in the terms of data scientists who think the model were themselves the mirror of the society. So very important, and here the AI must reflect the diversity of the users or affected population and promote diversity and inclusion. So equity is the fact that AI wards against the risk of discrimination and unfair treatment, and that even promotes inclusion. Let's move to the third principle, which is the transparency and explicability. The problem here is that deep neural networks are very efficient for sure, but and needs less data, but they behave like black boxes whose operation is almost impossible to decode because of the lot of parameters that we could use, millions of parameters that we could use for creating a deep learning algorithm. So here we have a risk of tensions between performance and explainability, which may require trade-offs. We have an example here of AI bank loans. When you know that today we don't have no more credit analysts. It's a job which is disappearing actually because banks use AI to analyze your demand of loans. And here we have one factor which is very important, is explicability. That means we need to tell you why the answer was yes or no, because the causes and criteria that lead to the conclusion of AI must be able to be to be brought, to the attention of the users. So it's not sufficient to say, okay, it's AI decided that, or the conclusion of AI was this and this. So we need to explain clearly, and it is one of the most important aspects of creating AI, is this explicability, which is an aspect that we are looking for and every human is looking for. Possible to understand where the error comes from. The limit to limit this risk of misunderstanding, it recommends one of the principles of AI is to keep certain data useful to the system for a proportionate period. This is what we call the traceability. And here we have another issue related to ecology. That means if we keep data, it is an impact on ecology, but we need also to make it traceable and to understand how these deep learning systems work. So we need to create a system in its design, its deployment process, which is documented with the clear description of data collection, labeling, algorithm use, business model, etc., etc. And the third thing is auditability of the algorithm and the traceability of the process, which are key in the search of responsibilities or in a recourse process, for example. So the system must be able to prove the reality of the ethical qualities and principle it claims. So transparency and explicability is AI knows how to explain its conclusions, and its processes are documented. And here we have three main aspects, which are explicability, traceability, and auditability. So the fourth one is ethical principle is respectful of privacy. We could take the example of cookies that we have in websites, which is mandatory today in France and some countries. I don't know if it is the case already in India or not. In all the websites, we have this cookies bar in order to respect the privacy and intimacy of individuals when using their data related to their search. So the example and the principle is not to capture data without its knowledge, without the knowledge of the user. This is very, very important in terms of privacy, and it included within the GDPR. Another example here is the Cambridge Analytica that everyone knows, which finds itself in 2018 at the heart of a global scandal, accused of having organized the aspiration of the personal data of 87 million Facebook users in order to target messages favorable to Brexit in the United Kingdom and the election of Donald Trump in the United States in 2016. So here we have an issue related to protection of data, and the responsible here was Facebook, which made that it was not very secured. All these very sensitive data were not secured. So one of the principles of an AI system is that the system must guarantee the confidentiality of data within the meaning of the regulation in force, GDPR, with regards to the collection, storage, processing, and access to personal data. It must allow the user also to retain control. That means modification and deletion of his personal data, which is one of the rules of GDPR also, including those generated by the AI itself. There is an example, very interesting example that I recommend to you. There is a documentary that you could find on YouTube, which is called Show Me Your Google Data, and I will tell you who you are. It's an actress who puts herself in the shoes of a young woman without knowing her, based solely on her Google searches for 5 years. So his apartment, his workplace are recreated. The most intimate events of his life are staged. You will no longer use the famous search engine Google with the same carelessness after seeing this documentary, which is called Google Knows All My Life, broadcasted on March 23 of last year. So very interesting to see, and I'm sure that it will change your way of using Google. So here the system must aim for a measured use of personal user data. Also very important, actually, we are in a methodology of creating algorithm where we collect all the data without questioning if it is useful for the algorithm or not. And one of the principles that we need to applicate is that we have measured use of personal user data. So respectful of privacy means that AI complies with GDPR and makes measured use of personal data. The fifth one is robustness. Here we have risk of dehumanization of society. We have risk of loss of human autonomy. We have risk of loss of control over the system and accountability. One of the examples here is the automatic image recognition, especially in areas such as automotive for self-driving cars or health for cancer diagnostics. It has been illustrated by researchers at Cornell University that changing a single pixel can totally distort recognition. So in the example of these researchers, a boat could be recognized as the car by changing one pixel. According to these same researchers, audio recording can also be faked by the application of a single disturbance, such as imperceptible background noise. So here it is clear that attacks of this type compromise the security of systems relying on AI bricks, which can have serious consequences. For example, the self-driving vehicle could have accident, illegal content, could bypass content filters, or biometric authentication system could be manipulated to allow unauthorized access. So it is question here of reliability. That means the system must provide reproducible and valid results. We need to have here rigor of design. We must have designed and developed rigorously by professionals and according to the recognized and appropriate methods. And we need to keep operation under control. That means the user of an AI system is aware of the recommendations made, but must be able to remain a decision maker, and the ultimate decision maker, and autonomous in his individual choices. So it is a question of robustness. That means AI is reliable and remains under human control, which is the first and one of the most important principles of an AI system. Finally, security. Security here, one of the examples is ChatGPT, and the fact that we are using today ChatGPT to analyze, for example, or on dark web especially, we use it to underway or to help write malware. So we are creating a system which is supposed to help in good issues, but finally some of today people to write malware. So here the system must have been subject to an ethics, a risk analysis at the time of its design. We have the evaluation must be renewed regularly in order to maintain compliance with the ethical requirements to which the system claims to refer. And we have also a question of security. In particular, here the system must guard against the risk of attacks that could change its behavior and make it dangerous or inconsistent with fundamental rights. We know that the first version of GPT-3, when it was created, became racist and in few days because of the fact that we put and we train it to use some words which are racist. So today there is an issue on security, which is technical issue. It's a very important ethical principle as ethical risks are analyzed and controlled, and AI needs to protect itself against cyber attack. So to summarize and finish, here are the 6 principles of ethical AI. Fairness, that means fair system behavior, clean and clear communication to the user. Equity, no discrimination, and need to be inclusive. Explicability, have auditability and traceability. Respect of privacy, confidentiality, and data governance use. The robustness, that means the system need to be under control and reliable. And security, that means the resilience to cyber attack and acceptability of risk. We have other ethical principles like democratic use or environmental impact that we don't evoke here, but which are also important when creating ML algorithm or an AI system. Thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, sir. I would encourage if anybody has something to ask. Do we have any questions?
Good afternoon, sir. Uh, Sir, my question is, can we trust ChatGPT? That the content that ChatGPT provides us, how much we can trust on them?
We are not supposed to trust ChatGPT as you are you trusting the books or the books that were written? That's mean it's just a tool, and the content generated of ChatGPT is generated by all the data sets that we are training the system on it. So it's not supposed to be telling you the truth, but it's supposed to be a tool that you could use and in order to help you to understand some issues or to answer some questions. So we are not supposed to trust any system. You are supposed to understand how it works. It's very important, because if you don't know how it works, you are not able to have or to criticize and to understand how to use it and how you could trust it. The problem today is that the use of such tools by people who are not understanding, or by young people who are not understanding how it works, and the fact that it's not reality, and the fact that it is just correlations of words related to the data set on which we train the system. And this is the main problem. That's why we are trying to improve and to put some ethical principles around creating LLMs in general. That's why in Europe, for example, we are trying to create our proper LLM. You know that today there is big question about the use of ChatGPT in France and in Europe, because of the fact that the data that we put on ChatGPT could be today very confidential, and could be on the system and could be used to train it for the future. But also the fact that the data set on which ChatGPT was trained are not related or not respecting the European values. So we need to train other systems which are much more trained with a data set which is respecting the European values. So it's a tool. That's mean, as I said, the responsibility is not the responsibility of the system only. It's the responsibility, part of the responsibilities of for the conceptors and the developers, and we need to put some frameworks on this. But it's also the user. You have a responsibility when you will use the content generated by ChatGPT. You have a responsibility to criticize them, and before using them, to ask yourself some questions related. It is respectful. It is in link with your values. Can I use it directly or not? So it's a combination of responsibilities, and we like a knife. When you use a knife, you could use it for a good purpose, but also you could use it to kill people. So it's not the consequences, or it's not the responsibility of the tool. It's also the responsibility of every user.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So one question from my side. Professor Sinha from Chitkara University. So my question is, sir, like human genetics. So human genetics, however mutated, or we are able to detect its ancestors. Like viruses, we are able to detect its ancestors or its variants or subvariants. So can we able to detect like any forensic technologies or like genetic informations in the images or the videos, so that we can detect any forgery or with the forged image, that genetic footprints or in the images. So the artificial mutations of the images could be detected in their forensics by their genetic footprints.
I'm not sure that I'm able to answer this question because very technical one. But what is important in such issues is just to understand or to apply all the principles of auditability and the methodology of creating the algorithm, which is much more important than the result itself. That's mean if you understand clearly how you put and how you create your algorithm and you are able to explain the results generated by the algorithm, this is much more important than the result itself. We know that developers today are focused on the result, on the performance of the AI system. It is accurate at 98%, at 70%, or 80%, but it's not the question. The question today is, how are you able to explain the results? It's much more this than any accuracy behind, because this way of creating, this methodology of creating AI needs to be respectful to these principles, and especially to all the aspects related to big data, because all the methodology that we are using today, it's focused on big data. We collect the data, we don't spend a lot of time on data to train data that we will use to train the model, and then we say, okay, algorithm will make the work and we'll see the accuracy. It's not the good thing. The good thing is to spend much more time on data, to be able to select the data on which we work. You know that big data, it's a very huge impact on the environment. Training ChatGPT one time today, training ChatGPT one time is the equivalent of going and coming back to the moon by car in terms of CO2 emission. So we need to move from big data methodology to smart data and good data. So we need to spend much more time in selecting the accurate data that we will use. This is the real methodology to see if it's creating some risks, biases of equity, etc. And then we could move for all the accuracy or the effectiveness of the model. So generally, whatever the example, if it is on images or not, we need to change our way to create algorithms. And especially when it is question of deep learning, where the parameters are very, very important.
Thank you, Professor Tawhid.
Any other question?
Yes, ma'am, I have a question.
Sure.
Good afternoon, sir. So we have natural language processing nowadays, machine learning, AI, AR, VR, and many other technologies. And from that, machine is now learning itself. What do you think? Can it be very useful, or it can be dangerous in the future? Or any legal compliances to put on those AI machine generated?
Why are you saying that the machine learning or the algorithm are learning itself?
Because nowadays we are also going for the supervised learning, where machine is learning itself. Earlier we used to learn the machine, but now machine is learning itself with the help of ChatGPT or supervised plus unsupervised learning.
Learning itself, it's a way of speaking, I think, but it doesn't mean that they are completely autonomous to learn. That means we give them the data that we want, we select the data on which we want to train them, we decide when to make reinforcement learning, we decide about the flow of data that we will inject on the machine, we decide about the algorithm that we will use to train and to learn the machine. So it's just way of speaking. You need to understand that there is some words that we are using today, which are just mean way of speaking, and that doesn't reflect reality. When we say machine are learning, they are not learning in reality. They are just having data and trying to create mathematical model and correlation in order to imagine some results. It's just this. Artificial intelligence is not intelligent, it's really not intelligent. It's just mathematical models that we are putting in place, and I know that you know that already. So if we put in place all the values and all the ethical principles that we talked about this in this session, we could for sure be able to say that machines are not learning in itself, because we put in place all these principles by design. And from the beginning, please, because the error and the problem that we have today is that we think about the ethical principle after we create the system. We make learning, we make data sets, we make algorithms, and then we say, okay, is it respecting ethics? It's too late. You spend already 2 years or 3 years to create things. And perhaps the data that you use are not RGPD, so it's too late. So we need to integrate all the principles from the beginning, to be aware of robustness, security, respect of privacy, explicability, and to put some